Astronauts' bodies are stressed by radiation and the lack of gravity in outer space. Everyone knows that. However, new studies may provide a clearer picture of what are the exact changes that take place. It's a lead that could help them assess the physical effects of space travel and discover problems sooner. What did they discover? Let's find out. Basically, space travel affects mitochondria, also known as the cell's powerhouse. Mitochondria have their DNA, which is released when they are stressed or otherwise damaged, causing cellular damage and other problems throughout the body. You might be wondering, what is DNA? Once the mitochondrial DNA is released, an increased amount of this is found circulating cell-free in the blood. The detection of this abnormality has helped us predict how persons with diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, and cardiovascular disorders will suffer in space. About the study. As per the new study published in the Journal of the American Heart Association, researchers looked at blood samples from 14 NASA astronauts who flew to the International Space Station for 5 to 13 days between 1998 and 2001. Blood samples were taken 3 times, 10 days before launch, on the day of the return, and 3 days following the landing. On the day of landing and 3 days later, all 14 astronauts had increased levels of free-floating mitochondrial DNA in their blood, ranging from 2 to 3 times higher than before space travel. According to the study's principal author, Dr. David Gokasian, the wide range makes it difficult to draw any conclusions. Nonetheless, he believes that the higher levels could be dangerous since mitochondrial DNA causes inflammation when it leaks into the rest of the body. The study, which was partially supported by NASA and the American Heart Association, also looked at the white blood cells of astronauts. They discovered a large rise in the markers of inflammation, DNA damage, and oxidative stress, which is a disruption in the balance of chemicals in the body that destroys healthy tissue and antioxidant defenses that neutralize them. It's a vicious circle. Radiation may cause DNA damage, which can cause oxidative stress, which can cause inflammation, which can cause DNA damage. Scientists need a greater knowledge of how people are impacted by radiation, the relative absence of gravity in space, and concerns like confinement and unpredictable sleep cycles, especially at a time when NASA wants to send astronauts back to the Moon and Mars. Deep space exploration is risky for a variety of reasons, but we need to learn as much as possible about the negative health effects so we can protect humans from stressors before, during, and after missions of this nature. The findings of the study add to a growing body of information about the dangers of human spaceflight. Scientists are still trying to figure out how to put astronauts into artificial sleep so they can travel farther into space, because they don't fully understand how space disturbs blood flow in a species used to gravity. Quote, "I can't emphasize enough how critical these studies are," Sayamwala added. "Before we consider commercial space flight or creating factories in space, we need to know how the body reacts to such extreme conditions in such a hostile environment." End quote. Further health risks associated with space traveling. The health risk associated with space travel does not end here. There are a whole lot of other risks that are caused by it. The ISS has hosted visitors from 18 different countries. Despite many accomplishments of mankind in space, spaceflight poses a variety of health dangers to humanity. To mention a few, there is DNA damage, as we talked about before, that is caused by radiation exposure, as well as bone loss, muscle loss, and blood pressure alterations that occur in microgravity. And the longer a person spends in space, the worse their health becomes. Hence, NASA, which aspires to send humans to Mars one day, faces a big problem and spends a lot of time thinking about how to make spaceflight safer. NASA requested that the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine conduct an impartial evaluation of more than 30 evidence reports on the dangers of long-duration and exploration space flights to human health as part of this effort. Radiation dangers. The most recent study looked at 8 NASA evidence studies, with half of them focusing on the health concerns of space radiation exposure. The planet's magnetic field and protective substances in the atmosphere insulate us on Earth. However, there is no efficient way to protect people from some types of radiation that exist in space, particularly on a long journey like a trip to Mars. There is no mechanism to defend against galactic cosmic rays, a form of ionizing radiation produced by exploding stars such as a supernova. This form of radiation can flow right through a spacecraft's hull and the skin of its passengers. Solar particle occurrences, which are difficult to predict, pose a radiation risk to astronauts. The relationship between radiation and cardiovascular disease is becoming increasingly popular. There is now enough evidence to justify the conclusion that the risk of degenerative diseases from long-term exposure to space radiation may be of considerably higher concern than previously believed. Cancer is another big source of concern. Radiation can induce genetic harm, raising an astronaut's risk of contracting cancer years later. At the moment, NASA's radiation limit for astronauts is set at a 3% cancer death rate. Women can stay aboard at ISS for roughly 18 months, and men can stay for about 24 months before breaking the limit due to the proximity to Earth providing some radiation protection. Humans on a voyage to Mars would be considerably over the limit. Kushinoda spent more than a decade working for NASA, where he created a database that analyzes astronauts' radiation exposure and cancer risk estimations. Raising the danger level to allow humans to travel to Mars would be a question of ethics. It needs a thorough discussion of whether you're willing to take that risk, and how much of a risk would you be willing to take. Elon Musk's take on this issue. We know that Elon Musk is planning to send humans to Mars. He is also considering starting a traveling company that will take people on trips to Mars. Is he aware of these serious health issues that are associated with space travel? And what does he plan to do about it? Well, let's find out. Elon Musk, the CEO of SpaceX, has only talked at the surface level about the technologies required to keep humans alive and healthy aboard Starship. These technologies must be developed quickly if the spacecraft is to carry people to deep space destinations like the Moon and Mars soon. The Starship specifications provided by Musk are amazing for any rocket. The vehicle is expected to stand over 165 feet tall with a 30-foot circumference. When Starship is operational, it will undoubtedly be the world's most powerful rocket. Things become much more complicated if SpaceX wishes to place people on Starships. Things get a little more challenging if SpaceX wants to put people on Starship for an extended amount of time. The vehicle's weight and complexity are increased by life support equipment. Astronauts require areas to exercise and sleep, as well as fresh air and water. And if Starship is to launch a lunar outpost, as Musk has suggested several times, the stronger radiation environment on the Moon will require improved shielding. All of these issues will be amplified if Musk's ideal goal of Mars is reached. Because of the great distance, astronauts will not receive resupply missions for years, and communication with Earth will be delayed. Radiation exposure will become much more intense, with no clear indication of how this may affect humans. It's foolish to believe that we'll be able to transport people to Mars within the next decade, says Dorit Donaville, director of NASA's Translational Research Institute for Space Health. Realistically, it'll be at least 10 years or more before we feel confident executing it. Musk has previously mentioned life support and human health in his Starship speeches, but only briefly. The SpaceX CEO was asked twice during his most recent presentation about the types of life support systems that Starship would use. "I don't think it's that difficult in terms of the ship," Musk remarked. "The life support system is relatively simple. There are a heap of other issues that need to be resolved. For one reason, specialists are unsure if humans can live and thrive in the Moon's low-gravity environment. Our bones and muscles are acclimated to Earth's gravity, but on the Moon, which has 1/6 the gravity of our planet, our tissues may degenerate more quickly. Exercise may help, but experts aren't sure if it'll be enough or what kind of equipment would be required. During the launch, design decisions such as lighting and chair angle can have an impact on how people feel and behave." Musk has discussed sending 100 people up in the Starship, each with around 10 cubic meters of space. That's quite a lot of room, especially in a zero-G condition, Musk argues. However, in the larger scheme of things, that may not be enough, negatively influencing people's mental state in the process. Behavioral elements are a huge concern, and you can't always foresee how people will react when they're so far away from Earth without direct communication. These issues are in fact only the tip of the iceberg. To begin a lunar outpost, much alone send humans to Mars forever, a great deal more will need to be handled. To conclude, SpaceX has chosen to address these issues after Starship development is complete, but this will delay the launch of Starship. Musk claims that only 5% of SpaceX resources are now being used to develop Starship, which could explain why the rocket is the main emphasis. Humans, on the other hand, will need to be addressed at some point. It's only a question of when. We hope you liked today's video. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, and press the bell notification so that you can be notified when we upload any new video. We will see you in the next video.